There are a lot of YouTube tutorials out there about live sound mixing and mixing in general. I've noticed there's a technique that's been going around using the gain knob that I think is really inefficient, and I want to shed some light on it.
So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up now. Okay. Level in the room's already good. I'm judging that immediately. If it was too quiet, I would go ahead and gain up. If it was too loud, I would obviously be gaining back as I bring the fader up.
There it is, bringing the volume fader up to 0 and setting your gain per your volume needs. I'm not exactly sure where this technique came from, but I do know that it is more prevalent amongst younger audio engineers. Some engineers prefer this method, but I want to talk about why it's just a less efficient way to mix. It's backwards. Before we dive further into this technique, I want to talk about exactly what the gain knob is doing. When a microphone gets plugged into a mixing console, the signal that we're getting out of it is called mic level, and it's usually really quiet. In order to use that signal efficiently, we have to amplify it up to what's called line level. Line level is a much louder signal that a mixing console can use more efficiently to send to many different locations. The gain knob at the top of the channel strip adjusts the preamplifier, which is controlling the amount of signal that we are bringing into the console. Usually the engineer will press the solo button on that channel strip, look at the LEDs in the master section, and use the LED lights to see by how much we've amplified and where that signal is sitting in the console. Different engineers have different preferences on where to set their incoming signals. I prefer to set my signals at -6 dB for studio scenarios and -12 dB for live scenarios. This accomplishes two things. One, it amplifies our signal to a usable level. And two, it evens out volume disparities between different signals. Hypothetical scenario. I have a band on stage, and there's a lead singer and two backup singers. The backup singers are naturally, unmiked, louder vocalists than the lead singer. That means I'll have to amplify the backup singers less than the lead vocalists to get them up to line level. But by having the same target of -12 dB for every incoming microphone, regardless of where the gain knob is set, they'll all effectively be the same volume in the console. If I put my lead microphone at unity on the fader, and I put the backup mics at unity on the fader, they'll all effectively be the same volume coming out of the speakers in the house. Now my faders become a visual representation of what's going on in my mix. I know that I want my backup singers quieter than my lead vocalist. So if I put my lead vocalist at 0 on the fader, and I set my backup singers to -5 on the fader, that's a visual representation of exactly where I've put those things in the mix. Now, this guy in this video is not a bad engineer by any stretch. There's actually a good bit of information in this video. I'd even venture to say he knows exactly what he's doing and just prefers this method. But I'd strongly recommend against following suit. The biggest issue with this method is that your faders cease to mean anything. If all of your faders are at 0, but all of your volume changes are being done on your gain knob, your faders are simply just passing audio at unity. As you need to make adjustments throughout the show, if you're changing the incoming signal at the gain knob, your fader doesn't mean anything. And if you try to adjust the fader, you don't know how that fader relates to the other faders on your console. It's all arbitrary. This process of mixing on gains makes it really easy for you to get lost in your mix. The other issue here is that as you make changes to the gain knob, you're also affecting all of the other locations that signal is being sent to. DCAs, subgroups, monitor wedges, all of these things are also affected in a really inefficient capacity, and you lose control over those things. Conversely, if we set our gain and then use our volume fader to make a volume decision, that fader, if we've set our console up properly, will only make that change in the house speakers, leaving the other destinations alone. It's all about having more control over your mix and having a tactile connection. The more connection you have with your tools makes you more connected with your mix, which makes you a better engineer. You can find stuff online about how mixing consoles want to run at unity and that their circuitry works better when everything is running at 0. But I don't think that this is worth the trade-off. There's another video I have where I talk about mixing at 0 and why it's important to keep your faders as close to it as possible. But if you want to learn how to do that without messing up your gain staging, click the upper right-hand corner. You have a volume fader for a reason. Use it.